Hey guys, what's up? It's Zola, and today we are going to be having a look at speed ramping, slowing down time, time warping, entering the matrix, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to be talking about frame rates, we're going to be talking about ways in which After Effects can slow down footage, and all that kind of stuff. It might get a bit complicated initially, but if I'm going to try and lead you through it in a logical way. I've actually put a lot of thought into how I would do this tutorial. First thing you need to know is that I'm recording my capture card at 25 frames a second, which means if I play footage in my timeline back at anything above 25, you're going to see skipping when I render this video out. You need to be aware that on my screen everything is perfectly smooth, but I'm not recording the tutorial at 30 or 60 frames a second or whatever, and that's why you're not going to see it be completely smooth. But I just thought I'd point that out because you might be like, well, he's saying it's really smooth but it's skipping on my screen, and it's just because I'm capturing at 25 frames a second with my screen capture program. So I just thought I'd make that the first thing I'll talk about. So yeah, I mean, this came up yesterday when I was doing the tutorial I was doing yesterday. I was like, oh crap, I've not spoken about speed ramping or time warping or anything like that. So let's do that today. First thing you need to remember is all this is going to be determined by whatever frame rate your footage was captured at. So if you're capturing with an iPhone, a camera, from a capture card, plugged into your console, it doesn't matter. Everything captures at a certain frames a second, and you can find that out by simply selecting your footage here, and you'll see 2997, 60. I think I've got one here down at 119, i.e. 120. And this is down to America, as I've explained before. The frame rates you guys play back at is 2997, which is essentially 30 frames a second. And so if you double that, if you capture at 60 frames a second, you can do half speed. And if you times that by 4, you can capture at 120 frames a second. You can play things back at quarter speed on your timeline. So pretty simple. Here in the UK, we play back at 25, so we can capture at 25, we can capture at 50, 75, and 100 to do the same effect. All that kind of stuff should be fairly self-explanatory and fairly easy to understand. So what I'm going to do here is, first of all, provide a disclaimer, which is After Effects cannot go. So even though I've captured this footage at 120 frames a second, which is quarter speed in American frame rates, if I look at my composition settings here, frame rate 99, if I try putting 120, you're going to find that After Effects compositions don't go higher than 99 frames. And the reason why that is because you should never be exporting anything above 60 frames a second maximum. Like, you might think, oh, the more frames I have, like the smoother my video is going to be, but believe me, the human eye can only see 24 frames a second, which is why film is shot at 24 frames a second, aside from reasons such as the specific motion blur you get is a kind of like the whole look is basically like tuned into the 24 frames a second capture. It's just what we're used to by now, and so even when they capture at faster frame rates, they bring it down to 24 eventually. When you go watch a film, it will always be in 24 frames a second. So first of all, you can't go higher than 99, and nor should you. Like, literally maximum you should ever be at is 60 frames a second. You'll get a smoother image. 30 frames a second is what we're used to, pretty much. So if you watch that, obviously let me explain a few things here. I've basically tried to capture maximum. So this composition is 99 frames a second. And I'm going to try and find this part here where Neil does a little head bob. So he does that. So let me try and preview this right now. So as you can see here, After Effects is struggling. It's telling me it's not real time. And so let's watch Neil do his thing here. So as we can see from his legs, he's kind of moving, it seems like almost half speed. But the reason this looks weird is because it's captured at 120, but we're playing back at 99, which isn't quite right. We could try moving this down to 90, and with that being a natural increment of the footage speed that we capture that. Oops, I think then that should be a bit smoother in terms of his legs and a bit less weird. But you know, he's still pretty much moving at a weird speed. It looks really smooth, but he's moving too quick. Now let's have a look at the same. So what I've done is duplicate the footage, but interpreted. So as you can see here, this is the same clip, but I've right click, go to interpret footage, and I've changed this to conform. So the frame rate from the file is 119, but I'm conforming it to 2997, which is a quarter of this. And I've made my composition settings down here exactly the same, 2997. So I've basically told it to read this at a quarter of the speed it was captured at, and my composition is obviously matching my frame rate settings. So let's see what that looks like. Bear in mind, this is exactly the same clip, exactly the same piece of footage. I'm just playing it back at quarter speed. And so now I only want this part here when he's bobbing his head. If we have a look at how, obviously my sound is going to be off because I captured at 120, and if I'm slowing it down you can't expect the audio to sync with the pictures, but you can see how much smoother this is. Look at his legs, look at his head. This whole thing is happening so much slower, and you can see now why I've brought it down to interpret it at a quarter. And then at this point I could speed this up and know that when I come back I will be at quarter speed. So that's, you know, that's 30 at 30. And here we have exactly the same thing. So so this was captured on my 1DX, and this is 30 at 30. So here we have Neil jumping up and down. We can see here it's not 100% smooth, but it's really, really slow. And it's lovely. And again, this was captured on my 1DX at like, I believe this was either 60 or it was captured at 120. I can't actually, let me find this footage. Reveal source in project. There it is. So if I come to interpret, yeah, 2997, which I know is not true, I've changed that. But now let's have a look at exactly the same clip at 60. So this is exactly the same clip, but now I'm playing it at 60 frames a second in a 60 frame per second comp, and you can see how smooth that footage is, but it's obviously not going at half speed. To do that, I would have to come into here, interpret the footage, and change this to 30 frames a second, at which point you're going to see this really nice, smooth, slow motion. So this is a 60 frame per second comp, but it's playing the footage back at half speed now. So the footage is playing at 30 frames a second in the 60 frames per second comp. So you can do the maths, you know. Basically, if the video is playing at the same speed as, if your composition is at the same speed as your footage, you're going to be playing at normal speed. If your footage is at a lower frame rate than your composition, you're going to be playing at half speed or quarter speed or whatever that is. So this is what I would recommend if you have if you shot at a really high frame rate. You can export your composition at 60 frames a second, but interpret at maybe 30 or something like that, and you're going to get this super, super smooth slow motion. So yeah, there we go. Basically, the long and short of it, just match your composition to your footage, and never have a composition higher than 60 frames a second. Those are the two things to remember. Yeah, now I'm going to show you how to slow things down manually. Now there's various ways in which to do this, and there's various things to take into account. The first thing is that some clips are going to be easier to slow down than others. Now here I have a really good example and I have a really bad example, and let's have a look at the bad example first. So let's have a look. We have this torch here. If I reveal it in the source, it's just a video co-pilot torch, and this is at 23976, which is film frame rate, so not many frames there to play with. And if I play this back now, we're going to see here, so the footage is quite drastic in terms of the way it changes from frame to frame. If I skip through this from frame to frame, you can see every frame is so different from the last one. Now what this means is that it's going to be absolutely horrible to slow down. virtually impossible. In fact, pretty much impossible. If your clip varies a lot from frame to frame, you're just going to have a nightmare in trying to slow it down to the point where I would say this clip is impossible to slow down. Let's play this. Let's just play. So there we go. It's playing now. And as you can see, there's lots of like crazy erratic movement. So let's try and slow this down. So the easiest way to do this is to right click, go to time stretch, and at 100 you need to remember this as a percentage. So it's playing at 100% speed, which is, you know, normal speed. If we half this to 50, it will play twice as quick. So there we go. But to be honest, it almost looks the same because of the nature of the footage. The footage was already quite crazy and erratic. If we go the other way, 200, so this is half speed. Obviously you can see our timeline, our footage expanding on the timeline because we're making the clip longer. Now let's see what 200 looks like. So you can tell things are going on. There's duplicate frames in there. It doesn't look too bad if I'm honest, but let's look at now 500. So this is like 1/5 of the speed. And so if we play that, we're going to see it's basically, if I skip through these frames one by one, as you can see, it's just holding the frame for 3, 4, 5 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get the idea. It's basically duplicating every frame over 5 seconds because we've slowed it down 5 times. And when you play it back, you're going to get an effect that looks like this, which is basically just a lot of holding frames, and it looks terrible. Now the difference is, if you turn on frame blending for your composition, there's different ways in which you can do slow motion. At the moment they're off, so we're doing this duplicate frame thing. If I press this once to match this, we're going to see it's going to try and do a kind of ghosting effect. Now that might be really hard to tell here, so I'm going to skip through frame by frame. And as you can see here, it's basically lighting up the next frame and then slowly fading it up over 5 frames, lighting the next frame, and so you get this kind of ghosting effect, which can be cool stylistically. I mean, it's a different way to do slow motion. So if we watch it again, so we're going to see, so you got this kind of ghosting, and this, you know, stylistically can be an effect, like I said. If we press this one more time, we're going to see frame blending, which is pixel motion, whatever you want to call it. There's different ways and different words this is called, but this is going to look absolutely horrible with this kind of footage. And the reason why is because this footage changes so much from one frame to the next. So what is this doing? It's basically going from, treating each frame as almost like a keyframe, and then trying to blend, like push pixels around until like they go into where they are in the next frame. And this is absolutely impossible because here you have, let's say, this piece of fire, and then in the next frame that's gone. So what it's doing is it's kind of trying to warp it, but it doesn't know where to warp it, and things just look absolutely horrible. If I play this back, we're going to get this really weird kind of jagged pixelated slow motion effect, which is absolutely horrible. So as you can see here, this footage is not the best candidate to slow down. Let's have a look at a good example. Here I have a piece of stock footage. I can't remember where I got it from, if I'm honest, but it's a really good example of a clip that will slow down lovely. Now let's have a look. So what it does is it's kind of like a pond-like effect. Now the difference between this is we have really smooth motion. Let's have a look at this blue circle that appears, right? It's going in a straight line, it's going at a straight speed. There's no crazy things appearing left and right. So let's first of all try and slow this down with the ghosting effect. We're going to slow this down 5 times as we did last time. So with the ghosting effect, oh, I need to apply the ghosting effect, sorry. So even with the ghosting effect, that already looks like quite incredible. If we zoom in, if we step frame by frame, you're gonna kind of see the frames appearing, but because there's so little movement in the footage anyway, it's doing it really subtly, so you can't really see it. If you have a look at this edge, maybe, so you can kind of see it there. They're kind of like the frame keeps fading one frame at a time. So it's not perfect, but you know, pretty hard to tell. However, if I change this to frame blending, we're going to get an absolutely beautiful result here. Let me just full screen this. Oh, and just render the whole area. And there we go. So we've got an absolutely, look at here, this looks absolutely perfect in terms of the way it's blending. And this, on the other hand, is a perfect example of how to do slow motion, and a clip that lends itself to being blended down, even, you know, from the things that are happening in here. Everything is just beautiful and smooth. So you can see the difference between the two clips if I bring this back to 100. Why this clip is so good at being frame blended, it's just because literally it's a really smooth clip. Things are, so you need to bear that in mind. Now there's one more way to speed and slow stuff down, and I'm going to show you that now with this clip, and that's keyframes. Now this is, it took me a while to get my head around this. So if you right click and go to, I believe it's time, and enable time remapping. You can also do time reverse layers. So time is basically where you have all your speed up. You can do a freeze frame, which holds, basically turns your footage into a still at whatever frame you made it. I'm going to undo that. If we go to time reverse, there we go, that's where I got the footage from, art beats. And if we do a time reverse, we're just going to see this footage coming backwards as you would expect it to. Like so. So that's cool. And the last but not least, we have time remapping. Now what this has done now is made a keyframe at the start and end of my footage. What does this mean? If I play back, we're going to see absolutely no difference. So this footage is still playing back at 100% speed, normal speed. But instead, time is now being displayed by these keyframes. So let's have a look. I'm going to make a keyframe now at exactly 1 second. So as you can see here, I'm on the 1 second mark. I'm going to create a keyframe. Now if I drag this keyframe to 2 seconds, we're essentially taking everything that is between these 2 seconds, i.e., you know, so we're taking everything in between here, and then we're stretching it over 2 seconds now. So now you would expect, actually I'm going to move the last frame as well, because I want everything, so everything between here is at the moment playing 100%, and everything here is playing 100%. If I move these two back to 2 seconds, so they're still the same distance apart, so everything there's going to play at 100% speed. But because we've moved this keyframe to 2 seconds, everything here is going to play half speed. Let's see what that looks like. So there we're going half speed, and then we're going to go full speed again. If I turn this back onto frame blending, that's going to become less obvious. So here again we've got half speed, and then after that we're going to go full speed. So there we have it, half speed, full speed. Now we can make this even more drastic. I could maybe make this over 4 seconds. So if I'm going to select that keyframe and move that to 4 seconds now. What this means is now I'm essentially making the footage quarter speed, and so on and so forth. There we go. So there we go. Now we got the footage at quarter speed, and then obviously afterwards it's still going half speed. Obviously we could go the other way as well. If we drag these keyframes to, I don't know, like 12 frames, this is like double speed now in between here. So there at the start it goes really quick, and that's double speed. If I move this even, and you know, if I reset time remapping and turn it on again, come to maybe maybe 4 seconds. So I'll make a keyframe there, grab these two, and move this down to 1 second. So now we're going to take 4 seconds worth of footage and compress it into 1 second. So we're essentially doing quarter speed. So there it goes really quick for a bit. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So we're going from being and then obviously you can add as many keyframes to this as possible. You know, you might want to slow down everything from 2 to 4 seconds over 6 seconds, but then you might want to speed everything in between here and here up. So we're kind of doing a speed up and a slow down as well. And the most powerful thing about this is, compared to the other one, is obviously because they're keyframes, you can choose the easing. So let me do that real quick. So let's say we want to make this 4 seconds worth of footage, and then we're going to take the next second and then we're going to slow that down. So we're going to go to speed up to slow down, which is going to look like this. So you know, we need to remember that everything here is going to be sped up, and then we're going to stretch these two out. So I might stretch these two out first. So I'm going to slow this down. So this is going to be really slow now, and then I'm going to speed everything between the first two up, and then I'm going to make an easing here. And if we look at my value graph, I'm going to bring this in like so. And so if we come out of the graph and have a look at what's happening, so it goes really quick and then it slows down. I'm not going to preview all of this, but let's have a look what that looks like. So we're going to have a really extreme time ramp. And then it's gradually going to slow down, as you can see there, which is a really cool effect, because if you go from speed up to slow down, it's nice if there's a slowing down. So there we have it. So we've gone from really fast to really slow, but because we've added an easing keyframe and messed about with this graph here, we've been able to smooth that transition out, as you can see here. So there we go. That's speed up and slow down. I know this is like way longer than one of my normal ones, but there is a lot to get through with time ramping, and hopefully I've kind of explained a lot of it. If there's any more questions, please let me know in the comments. But yeah, I'm going to stop babbling now. Thanks for watching, guys. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully.